G'day, my name's Josh and I run a mechanical keyboard shop here in Sydney. Let me show you some of the sales analytics for the year of 2023. In 2023, I did a total of $91,000 in sales. That does include taxes, shipping, and returns. And we'll dive into that as we break down a little bit more details here. Here's the first chart we're going to be having a look at. This comes directly from Shopify, and this actually shows the full sales volume according to Shopify for the year of 2023. You can see we had a bit of a strong start at the start of the year. However, once it hit about the middle of the year, we peaked, and then from there, the sales kind of dropped off. And there's a few different reasons for that. Throughout this video, we'll dive into some of that detail. Here you can see a bit more detail about how the sales breakdown actually goes. We can see we have just under $85,000 in gross sales with a myriad of different discounts and returns throughout the year. These are pretty standard numbers. There's various reasons why obviously people have discounts or return items. All in, according to Shopify, just based on sales and items alone, we are looking at a total of $16,000 in total profit. This number is calculated purely in Shopify and actually just includes the difference between the cost of goods and the sale price. Here we can see some details about different payment types. Obviously Shopify Payments is the main platform that I use. I do also support PayPal as well. And so you can kind of see the bit of a split between the two. So we've got $83,000 in Shopify Payments and then $7,000 in PayPal. Throughout the year, there was 695 orders in total, with a total order value or an average order value of $125 per order. Most of the volume is normally something like switches, which typically come in at about $100, if not less, depending on the switches. However, there's obviously some other higher ticket items that end up carrying that average order above, and you'll see kind of what those actual items look like next. Here we've got the sales volume of a few of my popular items. The Drop Bear is a custom 60% keyboard, which has a polycarb case and a Damascus steel weight, and is overall a really good product, comes in relatively cheap, and has been one of my best sellers. In fact, I just sold another Drop Bear last week. So there's constantly more and more of these boards being sold, so it's pretty easy for me to see that kind of being in the popular spot there. Second off, we have the Vanguard 65. Now, this is a group buy that I ran. The Vanguard 65 was a beautiful 65% keyboard with a knob and a slider, which also made it very unique and different. So I was a big fan of this board, and a lot of people in Australia were as well, as you can see. Thirdly, this is probably my most popular switch that I have sold. It's the Gateron Oil King. Now, the Gateron Oil Kings are an absolutely beautiful switch. They come pre-lubed and have just an awesome specification. They're probably my favorite switch to actually go ahead and throw into a board. It's what I use primarily a lot of the time. So if you haven't already checked out some Gateron Oil Kings, I definitely would recommend it. Grab it from a vendor near you. The fourth item on this list is my Let's Tango. So this is the first board that started it all. It's the 40% ortholinear split keyboard that I originally designed. And this was the first board that I actually went and got manufactured. And that's what actually started Mountain Keyboards. So it's good to see that in 2023, we sold quite a few of those. By estimates, I would say probably around 12 of those, maybe a little bit more. And it's always good seeing those sell through. Throughout the year, I had an average customer return value of 26%. This is overall pretty high for I think a lot of e-commerce businesses. However, at least for my keyboard space, my keyboard store has been quite common for myself to have a consistent returning customer rate. I think that's because the service really matters, and there's also not a huge amount of different other stores that sell the same products. So once you find a customer that's happy with you, typically they are willing to return and purchase more goods from the store. All right, well, for anyone who has been following along on my blogs so far, this next section here is actually including a lot of new statistics. So essentially what I did is I took all of my bank statements, all of my transactions, and I actually put them into a program called Actual Budget, which is a finance tracking tool that allows me to go ahead and actually categorize things, and then tag different notes, details, and things like that to those expenses. And then I can build not only great graphs, but I can see real detail about how my business is going, how my finances are going, and really dive into and get into the nitty-gritty of that. So this is the first blog that I've written where I've actually dived into and put this new content and these new graphs into blogs and actually sharing it. So hopefully you like it. All right, so let's go ahead and have a look. So yeah, these next few screenshots are actually not coming from Shopify. They are coming from Actual Budget. And here we can get some really good details. So first off, let's have a look at the monthly net breakdown. This is the first screenshot from Actual Budget here. This is actually going to include my income and my expenses. June was a very busy month for me, with both a lot of expenses, but also a lot of sales coming in as well. A little bit earlier, I showed you the Shopify screenshot that actually showed that there was $16,000 in profit. However, here we can actually see what the true profit is for 2023, which is a total of just over $12,000 in profit. And this is being calculated with all of the expenses throughout the year, and taking that away from the actual income from the business itself. So this actually provides the kind of a bit more holistic view of how much money my business is actually bringing in for that year. Next off, we have a wonderful graph that shows a little bit more detail into the monthly income. So here we actually have a graph breaking down each month, covering off the different, where the income has come from. So as you saw before, primarily it's going to come from the Shopify income. However, there is a bit that comes from PayPal itself. The PayPal income is actually a little bit more sporadic, as I don't just immediately take the money, and every time someone purchases with PayPal, I don't take it directly and put it into my bank account. I typically let it build up, and then if I have some way to pay, a lot of companies that I purchase products from actually take PayPal only. So I will send them with PayPal, and then anything left over I actually will then include into my bank statements. So that's why you're seeing that kind of sporadic. And if you're wondering around July why there was no income there, it's very possible that there were sales through the actual store. However, occasionally when Shopify sometimes has errors when actually sending that income, and during that time I was actually quite busy, so I wasn't actually able to fix those errors. So as this is just a side business, the money was just building up inside Shopify, and then once I had fixed it, it then came through in August, as you can see there. All right, so here is where the fun really begins, in my opinion. There are a lot of different graphs, and we're going to be going into a lot of detail around the expenses. I think the income itself is always fascinating, but I think where I've always found a lot of interest specifically in businesses is where they're spending their money and where it's actually going. So the first graph we're going to have a look at is expenses by category. And so you can see, not surprisingly, cost of goods sold is the biggest expense. This is me buying products and buying various items for the store. So when you purchase 100 switches from me, I then go ahead and replace that, typically by buying 1,000 switches at a time instead. But yeah, this is continuously me purchasing more and more product and going through that process. So you'll see I have a total of $76,000 spent on expenses in 2023. And here we're actually breaking down some more of those details. So to start out, we have cost of goods, and that's totaling almost $40,000. That's a pretty substantial amount. However, in 2023, I actually didn't spend as much on new items just because the business was a bit slower. And as you'll see in previous years and years in the future, this number is actually a little bit low for the year. Most of the time I would be spending money on purchasing more stock. However, in this case, it's actually only half of my expenses. So yeah, I just obviously wasn't purchasing many more items here. We can see, secondly, we have shipping actually as the second biggest expense, just under $11,000. This is pretty expected. This is shipping, obviously, is pretty expensive to send those items across, especially when a lot of my customers are over in the US and Europe. In 2023, I spent $9,000 on prototypes. I've been spending quite a bit of time prototyping my newest keyboard, which is actually called the Split 60. It's a 60% split keyboard right down the middle. This is the polycarb version, although this is probably just going to be a prototype. I don't think the finished product will actually come in polycarb. And you can see the brass backweight on the end there. So yeah, there was about $9,000 in this year spent on prototypes. In total, if I'm honest, I think I've spent probably about $15,000 in prototypes now. It's been very expensive and there's been a lot of problems and finding the right manufacturer, but that's for another video. So that's where the $9,000 went into, I believe that's 2 versions of prototyping for those particular boards. Typically with minimum order quantities of 1 or 2, it becomes quite expensive in actually getting those manufactured, because sometimes the manufacturers don't want to manufacture such small amounts. And the 4th item here we have is taxes. Unfortunately, when you make money, you need to pay taxes on it, and I am not exempt from that. So 4 times a year I have to pay a GST, or a goods and service tax, which comes out to about 10% here. So that's where those taxes are, directly there. As I've not made a real profit in this business itself, there hasn't actually been a tax on the profits. It's just based on the GST. Okay, great. So let's actually go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty of what each payee for the different categories is and where the money is actually going, so we can break it down a little bit further. So we'll start off with the cost of goods sold. Here we can see some details of where I've actually spent money for the cost of goods. So the highest expense for me for cost of goods sold was $12,000, and all of that went towards a business who I was purchasing Gateron products for. So that's your Gateron switches, specifically Oil Kings was a big one for me. Your Gateron stabilizers, and then other Gateron products. Second off, we have Keep Front. This includes the Vanguard 65. Third on the list is a company called Ancro. These are an item that I haven't actually put on the store just yet, but I have a range of different Choc Kale switches, and they're a small low profile switch that are used for various different products. I've spent a good chunk of money there, and unfortunately at the moment they are just living in my warehouse, not on the store. We then have another manufacturer here, Guangzhou. They are a PCB manufacturer, and I actually purchased several PCBs from them, and when they were manufactured, specifically the EC PCBs. There's various different products that I've actually got manufactured specifically for that. Some of the products just didn't work. Some of the products are already available in my store, like the EC60 PCB. So I will have a full drop bear kit, EC kit, hopefully very soon. Awesome. So now we're going to jump into the pays for shipping. Now there's actually just 2 of these, so it's pretty simple here. For these particular pays, we have Ozpost and Shopify shipping. So Ozpost is obviously the Australian posting service. During 2023, I used these guys quite a lot. However, now most of my customers actually choose to use Sendle instead. Shopify shipping and applications is actually where Sendle is being accounted for. Unfortunately, Shopify actually bills me all in one lump sum with the apps included, so that's why you see that there. But a huge chunk of that is the shipping for Sendle. Next up, we've got the pay for prototyping. So you can see some details here of the different manufacturers in different areas that I've actually sold to. So first off, I actually sent a large chunk of money to the Drop Bear designer for his work and help to design the Drop Bear 60, as the board I was talking about before. So that's me sending out those fees, along with a couple of different prototypes with different companies, and also some different designs for the Fever Dreams desk mat, and then also PCB design costs as well. Now for general, there's actually quite a range of different companies that I've actually been paying for. So here we've got some details. Concept M is my accountant, so I've been sending obviously payments for my business. There's a couple of different other companies and keyboard stores like Cafage and Custom KBD. If you haven't had a chance, check them out, including Daily Clack as well. and then there's just some other Australian brands and stores. And the last graph here is actually around the payees for subscriptions and donations. So here we've got some different costs, such as my accounting software, Xero, which I pay for. Starship It was a shipping company that I used to use for a little bit there as a subscription service. I no longer use them, but I did. I also used Autodesk to design my new board, which you saw earlier. The last item there is actually donations to the Food Bank of New South Wales, which receive donations when customers purchase one of my red For Good aluminium keycaps. That's it. So that includes all the details and all the analytics for 2023 for my custom keyboard shop here in Sydney. If you have any questions or want to see some other statistic that I haven't already shown you, please definitely let me know. And if you're interested in seeing more of these, I should have some more coming down the pipeline. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Until next time.